is. So as before the address, we've got Brendon O'Connor with us in the studio in Sydney, and Brendon O'Connor here with the studio in Sydney. Brendon, is that up there with Tucson in terms of Barack Obama correctly reading the mood and inspiring the nation, or did it fall a little flat for you?
Well, it's a different type of speech. I think he was very relaxed. I think he probably feels a degree of confidence, which you saw in the speech. He's eloquent as usual. But a State of the Union address often seems like a laundry list. A little bit about this, a little bit about that, policies here and there. It was a deficit, it was education. If there was a theme, and I think this has been something we saw in the inaugural address he gave, it was a pep talk for the nation. America is still great, it's not in decline, he said. He suggested, he makes this claim that America is the largest economy in the world, which it is. And quite surprisingly, in recent years, a lot of Americans have thought China is a bigger economy. It's about a third of the United States economy. So I think it was a sense of trying to renew a sense of confidence in America, and he wanted to do this, I think, largely through education, through innovation, through free enterprise, which was something that he put out there, I suppose, which would be seen as maybe a little more pro-business.
Do the financial commitments strike you as measures which will effectively address the mountain of debt, that freeze on domestic spending for 5 years?
I think that's the very difficult issue that both parties face, how to get rid of this massive deficit that the United States has. There's a commission set up to try to look into areas, but I think this will be where the real tension will start to come. If the Republicans want to push some of the cuts into the areas where Democrats are much more keen on keeping the spending going, the Democrats will want to cut certain things which they see as pork barrelling for Republican states and projects. So that's where we're likely to see a lot of tension. We saw it when the Republicans got control of the Congress in 1995, and there was actually a shutdown of the government, which led to a real loggerheads between Bill Clinton, the President, and the Speaker of the House at that time, Newt Gingrich.
What chance do you give that dialogue on illegal immigrants succeeding?
Well, this is one of these issues which is incredibly difficult. It was something which had been raging away in Arizona, very unfortunately, last year. It is a major problem in the United States, with maybe 10 million or more illegal immigrants living in the United States. So it's something that has to be talked about, but it's something that politicians don't seem to be able to find compromises on or very effective solutions on. So I think Obama makes the right gestures on this issue, as he does on lots of issues, lots of gestures in the speech, but there wasn't a lot of firm policy suggestions here.
And there's no way he's going to give any ground on those health reforms?
Well, I think this is really what he sees as his legacy.
Yep.
If he's achieved something of proportions for the generations, that he'll be remembered in the same way as a Lyndon Baines Johnson was remembered for bringing in health reforms in the 60s. This is his legacy reform, and so to back down on it would almost be to surrender his presidency in some ways.
Okay, we've got Lisa Miller in Washington now. Lisa Miller, do you think Middle America will be impressed with that?
Well, there are supposed to be about 48 million of them watching it tonight, so they arrange their social lives around being able to tune into this speech. It is something that could determine how they look at the presidency, and also how Barack Obama is running this economy over the next 12 months. Basically, they want to get their jobs back, so it's all about the deficit spending and whether he has put up these ideas, whether this freeze on domestic spending is going to be enough to turn the tide.
Yeah, was there lesser focus on jobs than you thought there'd be, or about what you're expecting?
No. I thought that the deficit spending, jobs, economy, that was the dominant part of this speech. I mean, I have listened now probably to about 5 of these speeches over the years here as a reporter in DC, and certainly there is normally much more emphasis on foreign affairs.
Yep.
There's a whole lot of other subjects that get tossed in there. This is one that was certainly all about the economy. I did think it was very interesting, given that we've just had President Hu Jintao here, that there was so much focus on the warnings saying that China or India is going to do it better if America doesn't do it, that educate your children better, get them to school earlier, make it all happen within the family. Because I think you and I were even talking last week about the fact that America tends to see China as a bit of a bogeyman, and that's how middle America certainly feels about it. So Barack Obama won't have done anything tonight to make people feel more relaxed about what's going on. He's certainly almost sort of firing up those fears that if Americans won't do it and won't do it properly, Chinese and Indians will.
And do the financial commitments, I just asked Brendon O'Connor this, strike you as inspiring in terms of addressing that mountain of debt? Was there enough meat to his commitments on the financial situation there in the US to convince people in the electorate that he's going to turn things around?
Look, I don't know whether it's that is going to make the difference for people. It is going to be how the Republicans react, which they are going to do very shortly. And we get back to what we were talking about before about the deficit and how the different sides of politics are going to approach this. The ban on earmarks, I think, is going to be very well received by Americans, because even though some of them live in electorates and constituencies that benefit from these earmarks, which are these little pet projects that members of Congress tack on to legislation. Well, Barack Obama said he's going to veto any legislation that comes to him that has these earmarks, these expensive pet projects inserted into them. I think that a lot of Americans will think hooray, because they feel that Washington marches to its own tune a lot of the time, and this is one way that Barack Obama can start saying, actually, we have to answer to the voters and not do what is going to reassure our own re-election come campaign time.
Okay, and Brendon O'Connor, finally, do you see the Republicans being won over by what Barack Obama's had to say there over the last hour or so?
No, I don't think so. They'll ask for more substance. I think they'll come back hard saying we've got to do something a bit more serious about deficit reduction. They might have a particular set of ideas. I don't think they'll be won over by his saying he's always a man who wants improvements on healthcare reform. They'll say, let's start again. The legislation is fundamentally flawed. So I think bipartisanship might have lasted in the chamber tonight. There was a little more warmth between the two parties than sometimes there always is. But I think it will be bare-knuckle politics over the next few weeks.
Okay, Lisa Miller in Washington, after your reporting on your fifth State of the Union address, thanks very much for that. And Brendon O'Connor from the US Studies Centre in Sydney, thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Thanks, Joe.